You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine. Today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with Blackberry Smoke's bassist, Richard Turner.
Hello everybody.
Howdy. So many of you who've been paying attention to the Southern rock scene have heard Blackberry Smoke. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's take a step back. How did you get started in music and on bass?
My parents were both musical. My dad played brass in a big band. He flew in the Air Force too, but he was very musical in high school and college. There was usually a piano in the house, and my dad listened to music a lot when we were growing up. So the radio was always on in the car. I just began to meet musicians over time that were professional musicians. My dad's sister's husband, so my uncle, he was the director for the Holiday on Ice Orchestra, the touring orchestra that, I don't know what they call it much anymore, but it's almost like Sesame Street on ice. Lots of little characters skating around, and at that time it was a live orchestra that was doing the audio for it, and he was directing it. And I was very intrigued by the timing that you had, that I learned watching them, that there's people skating pretty far away, and they've got to time their audio so that everybody hears it at the time somebody jumps and lands. And if they do a little, like a whistle, a pipe whistle, it's got to time all this stuff. So it was wild watching people time to skaters. I got thrilled to death with it and thought that seemed like a fun job to do. Play your instrument, get paid, tour the world, meet different people. And being that my dad was an Air Force colonel, I was already sort of born into traveling. Over time, you go to an elementary school and they're passing out instruments. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately, much in the United States. But back when I was growing up, you sort of chose what musical instrument you're going to play, and almost everybody in elementary school was playing something. So I was given a clarinet, my dad's clarinet, and played it for a little while. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but they didn't have any electric guitars or rock instruments at all going on in the elementary school band. Of a taste of reading music and working with an ensemble and working with a director and, cooperating as a group musically. So then my little brother came along and he started to play the trumpet. And I think that, like a lot of people, they just don't, that vibration on their lips doesn't thrill them to death. So they moved something else. So he got a snare drum and started on the snare. So I'm playing the clarinet and he's playing a snare drum in the school band. And after a while, you kind of want to rock, and the older kids in our school had little bands together, little garage bands, and would perform at the talent shows at the middle school by this time. And so I saw some of the older kids performing, and I thought, wow, they sounded, to me in my 7th grade years, they sounded as professional as any other band playing. And I thought, well, they've got a great future in it. They look like they're happy, and they were good students, remarkably, too. So, well, maybe not remarkably, but they were great students and great players. And so that kind of affords you the ability to do almost what you want to do as a kid. If you're meeting the expectations and the goals of your parents, you can get the Les Paul as opposed to the clanky acoustic or whatever that you got at Sears. So they had great gear and they played great music, and I decided I'd like to do that. And so obviously my brother and I were already in tune to music, so we decided I want to play the bass, and he wanted a whole full drum kit. My uncle, being the orchestra leader, was very connected, so he sent a 13-piece Slingerland set, vintage, beautiful kit, with a double bass on it to the house here, and my brother took to that really quickly, and I woke up Christmas Day expecting a bass and wound up with a guitar. I'm not one of those people who was a guitar player who got frustrated and became a bass player. I always wanted to play the bass, and I was frustrated when the guitar showed up. So at my earliest convenience, I traded that guitar in on a BMX bicycle and went absolutely crazy racing bicycles. Traded bicycles in on a bass eventually and started hooking up with the people and other kids in high school that wanted to play. Whoever's parents were the least problem, whoever's parents didn't have the biggest problem with us, we would rehearse in their basement. So until they got sick of us, and then we'd have to move to somebody else's basement. Eventually, we found out that you could rehearse in a storage facility. So we go to a storage unit, and then more or less professional rehearsal facilities started to open up around Atlanta. And I was still in high school, basically. So little bands formed, little bands broke up, people went their separate ways. My brother and I always remained playing together. From that, I mean, if you're not paying your bills and putting a roof over your head, you kind of got to work a day job or whatever, depend on your rich parents. Well, we didn't have rich parents, so we worked day jobs and did fine with that. But there's always that calling, and you're always rehearsing at night, so you're never at work with proper rest. So it's a battle. Your boss wants to fire you, but you need a job, and your love for playing keeps you up all night. It's just a crazy circle. Yeah. So eventually, just like with anything, if you put enough fire to it, you're going to find success. If you stick to it, put enough time and effort into what it is you're doing, I don't see any reason why anything wouldn't pay off. If that's your heart, you'd follow your heart. What more could you want? So luckily, I don't know if it's luck or just sheer perseverance, a little of both maybe, but both of us make a living on playing in rock bands, or this rock band.
And so how did Blackberry Smoke get started?
Well, being that my brother and I were always always in a band together, we actually got so tight in the Atlanta music scene that we were living at our rehearsal facility. He and I were playing in a speed metal band at the time. There's probably 50 bands called Nihilist over the course of the past 20 years, but there's a well-established European band called Nihilist, and there was us in the U.S., and so we were getting our fair share of opening slots for Testament, Voivod, Slayer, all those great speed metal, heavy metal bands. Mm-hmm. This first rehearsal facility we lived in, you could hear 60 bands rehearsing all at the same time. If you walked around the hallways, you could it's like changing a radio station subtly. You can hear good music or you can hear real bad music, and some people are just getting their start, and some people are very established professionals all in the same building. So in one day you might have Stone Temple Pilots, Smashing Pumpkins, and then 40 or 50 local Atlanta bands struggling on all different levels. You get to have a perspective of what is a successful sounding band, how people behave with each other, the interactions with each other. I noticed really early on that bands would fight and fuss, and they never got anywhere. But you could hear the fight start. You knew as soon as somebody showed up with a case of beer that was going to be the band that probably got into an argument before the night was over. So they're drinking themselves nuts, and they get mad, and they get in a fight. So we took advantage of that, and we would hear these bands that sort of had a commercial or a decent sound to them, and then we'd go, well, their bass player is going to start the fight. Their drummer is going to start the fight. These are the two people who are in it for the wrong reasons. Totally took advantage of it. Found out that we sort of knew some people in a band that was just self-destructing before our eyes, and we offered, my brother and I said, if you can lose the bass player and the drummer, we'll go record these songs with you, at least get you through a recording so that you can pitch it. And we just want some credit on the record, should it become a record. So we just stuck together with this one band. I'm going to fail to mention it because I'm just not going to give any credit to anybody else. In this band, we met Charlie, the guy Charlie Starr, who sings for Blackberry Smoke. Mm-hmm. So my brother and I and Charlie and another couple of individuals sort of had a little hacky band together and went and played a couple of gigs, and then exploded in a bad way on one of the shows, and the fallout was that I said, I'm not doing this. I quit. So then, of course, my brother quit right behind me. And then Charlie was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to go play with the Turners. Yeah. And everybody was like, oh, wow, that's great. So not everybody, but Britt and I were thrilled with it. So we're a little three-piece sitting around, rehearsing together, trying to just play together and make loud rock music together. So we kind of got our way into some shows and decided if the three-piece wasn't probably going to get it, we needed to flesh the band out a little bit. So Charlie knew Paul Jackson from his days in Florida in the 80s or 90s, and said, I'm going to invite this guy up and see how he sounds with us. And we're like, all right. So we ran through a whole bunch of different guitar players, and they're all great. They just had a different direction. So Paul fit the best. And we're glad that he's with us because he's fantastic, beautiful voice, and a great guitar player. So that little four-piece traveled the United States for quite some time and even into Europe. At some point, we were like, we've got to get a keyboard player to really give this what we're hearing in our heads. We need a permanent keyboard player. We basically over the years, I'd been keeping a little diary of keyboard players that I met and numbers, telephone numbers and contacts and things. And so we had some downtime. The band, when Blackberry Smoke was in Atlanta, chilling out off the road. I'd just go to the local bars and see what was still going on. And this one keyboard player, I seemed to get along well with everybody and didn't stick out too much. Just sort of the perfect fit. It's hard to explain, So I walked up to him while he was playing a set in his other band, and I laid our CD on his keyboard while he was playing a set, and it flamed. That's his singer. I think his singer still wants to kill me, but said, shouted, give me a call if you're into it. Had my number on it, and the next day he called and he said, hey, play guitar too. And I was like, well, we got plenty of guitars, but let's jump all over this keyboard business. But it's nice to know that people got other angles. So it's a formidable outfit for sure. After we took the keyboard player under our wing, we decided we needed a bigger vehicle. So get a bigger vehicle, causes more expenses. Better go play some more shows, better write some more music, put some more records out, print some nice T-shirts, be pleasant, play good shows.
And so Blackberry Smoke's been together for how long?
I'm going to say 18. It's from 2001, I think, was when we were officially formed. So 17, 18 years, something in along that line. But Charlie and Britt and I had played together in that previous band for 2 or 3 years. So Charlie and Britt and I maybe have played together for 25 years. I don't know. And brother and I played together since we were children. That's a long time.
That is some tremendous longevity. Obviously, you had to find the right combination of musicians to be able to stay together, that way. Right now, you guys are on the verge of releasing a new EP, The Southern Ground Sessions. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we went in to do a little bit of video work to support the record. We were going to go cut 2 songs or something. Like a lot of the things we do, we're usually so ready for it. It's like once you get into it, it's done. We're so prepared. It's not like a big to-do going on. It's just like a blink of an eye and you're done. And you're like, all right. Next thing you know, there's a DVD out. So, but with this, we came into it wanting to shoot some video, just a few angles, and there was some room mics around. It wasn't set up to be a recording. It was just set up for video. And the engineers were coming back over in between takes of these 2 songs. We're like, man, this sounds fantastic. And we've got this place the whole day. Why don't we just roll as much as we can? We'll get these 2 songs out of the way that are the most important for this one, what we set this up about. But let's just keep on tracking and throw together some more stock footage, some B-roll, I guess you'd call it. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did, and amazing.
Well, and I've had an opportunity to hear Medicate Your Mind, Run Away From It All, and Best Seat in the House so far. Some really nice work there. It's kind of interesting. It's got more of that acoustic.
Well, I generally rely on a Avalon U5. It's a studio DI that I picked up in the studio about 10 or 15 years ago when they were first getting used. And I thought, well, I'd love that on the road. But at the time, they were like $1,200 or some business. They were ridiculously expensive for what I was making. I found one on eBay for about half and bought it and stuck it in the rack on the road. And immediately, people that not everybody who comes to the show has an ear for the gear. They don't even care. They love the show and it sounds good to them, whether it sounds bad to us, But people are immediately coming up saying it's an attention to detail in the gear to begin with, quality, tones, things that you can listen to. They don't have to be loud. They don't have to be overpowering. They just speak for themselves. In that, there's a lot of vintage gear, a lot of tube amplifiers going on up there. For me, like I said, that Avalon U5, it is the backbone of what I do in the studio and live. It's appreciated by all engineers, and we keep our own engineer. But in the cases where we've run across people who don't know us and have to mix us, they're like, "Wow, thanks for giving us a bunch of great signal to work with." So it's not all the talent in us. Some of it is the gear.
Yeah. And in addition to that acoustic bass, do you use any other basses?
Oh, yeah. I rarely use that acoustic bass except for videos things because it's delicate and it will feedback no matter what. I have other acoustic basses that I would tour with if I was touring with an acoustic dreadnought body style. Mm-hmm. I got a couple of uprights I would love to take on the road, but they're just going to come back smashed thanks to Delta Airlines and such. I am very timid about what I take out on the road. Lots of the things that I play in the studio are not the things that I play on the road, but I have a bulletproof arsenal for the road and some delicate things that are better off kept at home for the studio. However, over time, I find that I have one or two basses that can cut it either way. That they're not delicate, they're bulletproof, and they're beautiful, and they're custom made. Generally, I have a luthier in LaGrange, Georgia, named Joe Hamilton, who started building me instruments several years ago, and every one of them is an epic piece of art. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with great gear. As my other signal, like a Mogami cable, real high-end cable if I have to use them, real high-end wireless systems. Tomastic Enfeld is an incredible string maker out of Austria, and they make mostly orchestral strings. And I think the genius of that string set that I use from them is that it's a silk core. It's not a steel core. It's a silk ribbon core with a flat wound wrapping on it. And they're real spaghetti, loose strings, real floppy, but are not floppy out of control, but they're beautiful. They're light, handle real well, and they stay in tune. I'll tune the bass in the United States, throw it in a kit up in Europe. It is dead on. And I've never really experienced that with steel cores and things like that. It's another great little trick, I think, is to have fantastic strings.
Gotcha.
They're not cheap.
I hear you there too. With this, you've mentioned touring. Right now, you guys have been kind of doing a first leg on a U.S. tour. I know you're heading to Europe October 12th. You're going to hang out there until around Thanksgiving time and then come back to the States.
Right. We'll play up until the 24th or so. Come back, we have a big Thanksgiving show in Atlanta for Children's Hospital in Atlanta. We do a big charity.
Cool. And then to warm up a little bit, it looks like you guys have booked a cruise in January.
Yeah, we've been doing cruises for a long time, and we first went out on the Simple Man cruise with Leonard Skinner way back in the day. Or I think it was a Simple Man cruise. We could have been another one, but we've done the Simple Man cruise, a rock boat. The one we do now is Outlaw Country Cruise. We partner together with XM Sirius Satellite Radio. There's a great channel over there, the Outlaw Country Music Channel, and we get lots of love from them, and we give it back. And most of those artists you can find on that cruise or one like it.
Very cool.
It's a blast. It's not like working for me. I take full advantage of the whole cruise situation.
Well, and if people want to know more about what you guys are doing, the best place to look is www.blackberrysmoke.com.
Correct. There's some social media stuff out there. We've got a Twitter account and Facebook and that sort of business, but I stay off of it.
They can eat up a lot of your time if you do, so I don't blame you for kind of steering clear.
Yeah, and who wants to look at this face?
Well, we're seeing it right now. Anyway, Richard, thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule. I know you're probably packing up to head out to Europe. Folks,
Man, I got a laundry to do.
There you go. Folks, you've seen him here. I've got a little blur on the signal. That's the beauty of Skype. Richard Turner coming to you live on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks for basing out with us here on bassmusicianmagazine.com.